Steve, it's great to see you today.
Man, it's always good to be with you.
So, Steve, Donald Trump now has won the White House, and you yourself worked in the US Congress for many years, and you're the founder of the Ukraine Freedom Project. You've been here in Ukraine since day 5 of the war. So, you're obviously a Ukraine supporter, but should people really be as worried that everything's going to change with Donald Trump? It's going to go totally against Ukraine? What are the Republicans going to do?
Well, I think one way you got to look at it right now is how much change is possible because the Ukrainians have been fighting without American weapons for the large part since for most of this year. Zelensky came out and said 10% of the weapons from the aid package have made it to Ukraine this year. So if Trump decides to take away Ukraine's weapons from America, they've got a lot of practice with fighting without American weapons. So I think a good model that we can look at is Mike Johnson. And on October 3rd of 2023, every Democrat in the U.S. House of Representatives voted with 8 members of the Moscow caucus of the Republican Party to oust Kevin McCarthy, who's the pro-Ukraine speaker. And this blew up the House of Representatives. Never happened in the history of America. And so Mike Johnson came in. He had voted as a rank and file member of Congress 9 out of 9 times against aid to Ukraine. And it took him 2 months to figure out where the bathroom is. It took him 2 months to figure out how to get any legislation passed. And after this epic blowing up at the House of Representatives, it took another 2 months or 6 months total to get Ukraine aid passed. So so Mike Johnson's evolution is from someone who was about as anti-Ukraine as you can get in Congress to someone who put his job on the line as the 3rd most powerful member of Congress to get aid to Ukraine passed. And so I think that what we see is that frequently when you get America First people the right information, good information about Ukraine, they come around.
So, what sort of information is it that gets Republicans to get on board to support Ukraine?
Yeah. So, I used to work in Capitol Hill. I was a leadership chief of staff for about 7 years. So I was in all the smoky backroom meetings. We've talked to about 110 congressional offices about various aspects of what's going on in Ukraine. And there's a couple things. One, you've got to phrase it in the American interest. And we talk to a lot of people that go and advocate on Capitol Hill in the pro-Ukraine community. And a lot of them are about, you got to help Ukraine or my country is in such trouble with the Russians and it's about them, right? It's about Ukraine. And you and I, man, I'm here. I'm about as pro-Ukraine as you can get. But in order to advocate for Ukraine, it needs to be phrased in the interests of the United States of America, because nothing says that America needs to support Ukraine, and this is U.S. taxpayer dollars, and so you just need to go ask nicely and make the case in the interest of the United States and America, which is frankly relatively easy. And Russia is not going to stop with Ukraine. Russia wants to rebuild the empire. You supply the weapons and we'll supply the lives of our very best people to take out this terrible, terrible dictator in Russia. Russia's been our adversary for a long time, and Americans still know that.
So, Steve, why don't you tell us more about that? What is the advocacy that you've been doing in Washington, D.C. with Republicans?
Yeah, so again, we've talked to about 110 congressional offices, but that's not the most important thing. Members of Congress, Democrat or Republican, are responsive to their voters. So you need to talk to their voters. And one of the things that we've done is we did polling that identified issues around Ukraine that move Republican voters from not supporting Ukraine to supporting Ukraine. And there's this understanding among Americans, among Republicans, is this feeling that Ukraine's someplace very far away. They talk funny. They're not like me. And so what we're able to do is, Russia is torturing and oppressing Ukrainian Christians, Protestants, evangelical Christians for their faith in occupied Ukraine. And I heard about this almost 2 years ago. And I just thought, wow, if Republicans knew this, because 60% of Republican voters identify as evangelical Christians. And when they find out the horrors being endured by people who worship God in the way they do, it brings them around. And I'll give this, and I spoke about Mike Johnson a minute ago. Mike Johnson was a Baptist activist before he joined Congress. And he is a very devout man. And Baptists are the third largest denomination, Christian denomination in Ukraine. It goes Orthodox, it goes Greek Catholic, and then Baptists. So we were able to get Baptist ministers who had been tortured for their faith in to see him. We brought them to his district. We were able to run digital campaigns, and we were able to generate some positive political feedback among his voters and among voters for Republicans in Congress.
So, in this new era, what is it, though, that Ukraine should be doing in order to better convey its message in America?
Well, and I've been getting feedback from my friends in Congress about Ukraine's advocacy efforts. And I think, again, it needs to be focused on American interests. It needs to be also just focused. Flooding Capitol Hill with Ukrainians, members of parliament or NGO people or whatever, is not the most effective use, right? Use of those resources. You know, get people who go to Capitol Hill who are on message, who are good at it, and have the ability to convey the case, right? Get the really good people on Capitol Hill, and then let's get everyone else to go to Shreveport, Louisiana, Dallas, Texas, Stillwater, Oklahoma. Places where there's Republicans that need help. Let's get Republican voters to understand that Ukrainians are people like them. So, again, members of Congress respond to their voters. And if their voters say, to hell with Ukraine, it's going to be really hard for them to support aid to Ukraine. If their voters say, I met some Ukrainians, I understand they're fighting for their freedom, I hear what they're going through, they're people like me, they worship God the way I do, then if their voters are saying that to members of Congress, it makes it a lot easier to get that vote from that member of Congress in favor of additional aid to Ukraine.
And what advice would you give to those who support Ukraine in the United States, to Americans? What should they do if they want to help Ukraine to get ahead?
So, Donald Trump won. Whether you like him or you hate him, that is a fact. Donald Trump is now the president of the United States of America. So saying unkind things about him at this point is just it's an exercise in self-indulgence. And, you may feel really good, like, oh, Donald Trump is, but he's the guy in charge. He makes a difference. So we need to figure out how to work with him. And there are ways to work with him. There's Trump, there's the people around Trump, there are members of the Senate, there's members of the House. What people don't recognize in this campaign season is that the behind the scenes work that members of the House, Republican members of the House and the Senate, have been doing to get Biden to let Ukraine use American weapons inside Russia. There's been multiple letters from committee chairmen and members of leadership that are Republicans going to Biden, a lot more, frankly, than Democrats. The Democrats have not. Here's the way the Democrats have been over this past couple of years. They're good for a vote. Yeah, I'll vote for Ukraine aid. Oh, you want me to stand up to the leader of my party and tell him he's doing the wrong thing by not letting Ukraine use weapons inside Russia? I don't know. I got to get out of here. I got a lunch date. And so whereas the Republican Party is polarized. You got a lot of people that really have a strong dislike for Ukraine based on, in my view, misinformation. You have a lot of people who are strong supporters of Ukraine, who are really fighting and who are taking very significant political risk to support Ukraine. Let's support the people that support Ukraine. Let's help our friends that are helping us.
So that makes a lot of sense. And it is true. There is blame to go around for why Ukraine's support is just not where it should be. But when I look at the National Security Council, I'm very disappointed. What do you see there?
It is a mystery to me why Jake Sullivan is not working at Chipotle right now. Look at what he's done. He screwed up the Afghanistan withdrawal. 8 days before the October 3rd, he said, the Middle East is as stable as it's ever been. He's been slow walking weapons to Ukraine with this, managing escalation idea. And so managing an escalation, prevent World War III, prevent a nuclear war. And what has that gotten us? That has gotten us, we started out with one nuclear power, Russia fighting Ukraine, and then the Iranians joined, who are almost a nuclear power. And now we've got a third nuclear power of North Korea jumping into the fray. So in any rational world, Jake Sullivan would be sent someplace else. And, the guy's a lawyer. Lawyers are trained to mitigate risk. I've never been to law school. Have you been to law school?
Nope.
Yeah. But I'm pretty sure Yale Law School does not have classes on military strategy. And so we don't know what Trump will do. We know what Jake Sullivan has done and would continue to do. And the Biden-Harris national security team started out in 2014. Poroshenko went to Congress, said, the Russians have invaded us. Please send us weapons. And President Obama sent blankets and helmets and other non-lethal means of support. Imagine, and Jake Sullivan was there. So imagine if Obama in 2014 had sent HIMARS, ATACMS, tanks, anything that kills Russians. Where would we be right now? How much more stable would the world be? How much better off would Ukraine be right now? So my thought is to have every Ukrainian write a thank you note to Jake Sullivan for all his hard work on behalf of Ukraine.
Sounds like a great idea. Steve, I really appreciate your time.
Good to hang out, man.
Thanks.